Hello, everyone, and welcome again to the Next Level Podcast. I'm Carm, and into the abyss we shall dive. Joined always by my lovely and talented co-host Clairxi. How are we doing today?
We are doing so good. I was trying so hard not to laugh. I'm sorry, because you're being so cheesy right now with our topic of the day.
My cheesiness is, would you say, to the next level?
Yes, I would.
But anyway, how's things? What's been going on in game?
Been helping out a lot of newer players. Our link shell's been expanding. We started Aeonics, which has been going really well, actually. I was kind of worried at first, because we started it and I was like, I don't know these people. I don't know their play styles. I don't know how well they are. And was like, we're just gonna go with it and see how far we get. And even the first round, getting all the way through Zeta and then almost all the way through Ruan. I mean, we made it all the way to Kieran before we're like, it's really late and we had to stop. Um, and then we restarted it last Wednesday. That happened, and we're already to a few
We have
helms
five.
remaining.
Yeah, we
Yeah,
have 5 mobs left.
that's just crazy. I was like, oh man, I remember when LOL Lockstyle first started doing Aeonics, and it seemed like such a struggle at first. And I mean, we didn't have as much gear as we do now, and um, just the access to so many things that have built us up. I mean, you, myself, and Mur all have way better gear than even when LOL started doing Aeonics. So it was just completely different spectrums. Just even seeing that too.
Sure, but the fun of it is like a lot of the people that we've brought in and have brought up through these Aeonics, they don't have that gear. All this gear that's dropping is like cool and new to them, and we get to talk about it in ways that we can integrate it. And the best part about it is it's just a lot of people, and really almost all of the group that we have. I would venture to say all of them are like interested in learning the content and learning just how to play the game in a different way, playing it better, and just improving themselves and improving their characters. And it's just been a really fun experience to see people truly going through and enjoying the game.
Yeah, I also like the fact that not one person is like, oh, I can't help you. Like, if anybody asks for help, anybody's been willing to just join in and assist with it too.
Yeah, I've seen a couple of them like trying to do some Odyssey stuff. I've seen people going in on UNMs constantly. It's not just a link shell of, oh well, when the leaders are on we can do stuff. It's a group of people coming together, even if they're not the best geared, trying to do anything and everything they can. And if they can't, they ask for help, and if they can, at least they're trying. Like, it's not like they're just like, we can't do this, so we'll just wait and sit around and pick our butts until events happen or somebody yells and we can just merc something or la di da di da. Like, they actually are interested in playing the game, and it's been really inspiring.
Yeah, it's been a really nice change to see. Even with different time zone restrictions, people have been getting on and just saying, hey, I need help with this high tier battlefield to get chapters. And people that are online have teamed up and gone to do it. Or I know Nia Moore, who's one of our newer members, was trying to get caught up to our Aeonic run before Wednesday. And a couple of people he got from his stream went and helped him, and then I joined in. And some of them have come over to the link shell because they just like that we love helping people, which I think is just great.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, we're just having fun playing the game with people who enjoy learning about the game and want to make their characters better. We're not really, at the end of the day, we're getting the experience, and that's really what the game is about. It's the experiences that you have in there. Yeah, you can sit there and have all the best gear and all the V20s and V25s and R15s and all these crazy things that you have. But if you're not experiencing the game and you're not enjoying it and you're not playing it and you're not learning and you're not embracing what the game actually is, then you're not really getting the full extent of your subscription fee. And at the end of the day, this is a 20-year-old game that we're paying subscription fees still.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, with the newer content coming out, with the Empyrean Plus 2 maybe coming out next month, I know that's when people were talking about it. And then later on in the year, you have Plus 3 coming out. It's so exciting to see what this new content's going to be bringing.
Yeah, I mean, even the chance of new stuff is so cool. I mean, some of the Empyrean right now are great macro pieces if they further enhance stuff or they become smoother midcasts or anything like that. It's like, this is what we need. This is the stuff we want. The devs are still doing things for us 20 years in, and quite frankly, they don't have to owe us anything. All we're paying for is the ability to get on and experience the game in the way that we want to.
Yeah, the only thing I hope is the new content for the Empyrean is more than 6 people, because I always feel bad with the fact that we have a static for Odyssey that we can't help people all the time with that event. So I'm hoping that with Empyrean plus 2 plus 3 content, we'll be able to have more ability to help other people with it. If we are able to do 18-man, then that makes it a lot easier. Because then we don't have to be like, oh, we can only take so many people this time, or we can only do this at like this time frame because there's time restrictions.
It would be really nice if there was more 18-person content. I don't know if the devs will go that direction because they're pretty much at the point where they want to keep it 6-man from what I understand. I mean, once again, I'm not a dev, so they could completely surprise me and throw a curveball into left field, and I could be like, oh, well, cool. But even if it's just 6-man, like, we're building a crew and we're building a team and we're helping them build parties and we're showing them job formations and different things and what each job does for a party. So when they are able to go out and do this 6-man content, if they can't do it with us, they're going to be prepared for it and ready to build these parties because they understand the way things are maybe not supposed to be done, because we don't actually do everything by the books. Our server, we have a lot of off the wall kind of goofy strats, and we like to mess around and we like to have fun in the game. And I'll never, ever say that any of our strats that we've posted, any of the stuff that we've put out, or any of the stuff that we do on a normal basis is 100% the best strategy, because at the end of the day, we dual box. So
Yeah.
it's just about having fun and being able to show different ways of doing things. There is no 100% way that this is the right way to do things. It's however you get the win, however you enjoy the content. If you enjoy falling flat on your face and being a troll, well, then there's space for that too. I don't think you're going to get too many party invites after a while, but there's even space for you to do that. You could probably find 2 or 3 people that just want to go in and get dropped every. Now, I don't really know who would want to do that, but there's probably those people out there.
Yeah, that's why every time I make those ambuscade videos, I'm like, by the way, we're dual boxing, so this is easier for us in a dual boxing aspect. So, I mean, people can take it how they want. If they want to change it up and see what works best for them, kudos. I always want you guys to do that.
Yeah, I mean, we're never going to sit here and say that dual boxing is the ideal way to play the game.
No.
It's just the way that we've kind of adapted, and we've worked really hard on all 6 of our characters between the 3 of us, and we want to see them continue progressing. So that's just the way we've decided to do it for now. I mean, we've talked about one day where we make 2 Odyssey statics with 3 of our characters in one, 3 of our characters in another, but that's a lot of time commitment. So it's all just what we make of the game.
Yeah, and I've told you before, I'm always like the first person that's like, "Hey, I'll drop mine. Mine can drop so I can focus." I'm totally cool with that.
Yeah, as we've progressed into V20s and stuff like that, it's become very almost painfully obvious the actual hindrance or handicap we're kind of putting on ourselves, but we're still making it happen. So it's the way we're having fun with the game right now. And as we grow new people and grow new relationships, hopefully that'll change over the time. But what I'm excited about in game right now is I'm diving into the abyss. There it is again. Diving into the abyss of the DD world and working on my samurai. Like that's the next job that I kind of want to focus on, get it ready and stuff like that. And I'm actually having a lot of fun getting to it, and I haven't really actually played the game in real content yet, but just the idea of getting things ready and stuff like that. Because I've played Ninja as a DPS, I've equipped a Nagling and a Blurred Shield +1 on Paladin, and I've done things like that, but those jobs really aren't feeding their full potential if they're just acting as a DPS. Samurai is like, this is what this job is built to do, bring the damage. So I'm interested to see if I enjoy it and how it goes.
Yeah, it'll be definitely interesting because you're more mage and tank focused. So it'll be definitely a different experience for you. Hopefully you like it.
Yeah, I mean, we'll see. Maybe it's just not for me, and it's possible that it's not. And there's nothing wrong with that. I enjoy the game the way I play it, and it's just I enjoy being part of a party and feeling like we're putting together all this stuff and this is happening. I've never wanted to be the guy before who's like, oh, look at my deeps and look at all the damage and I topped the parse. I don't think I've ever topped a parse in the history of my character. I probably never topped a parse, which I'm okay with. I enjoy being the guy that's holding the group together so that we can have the person who's topping the parse and we can have those people feel comfortable to just go crazy and beat the crap out of things and piss out damage and la-di-da-di-da. So that's just been my play style, but we're trying things else. Trying to mess it up a little bit.
Yeah, I can understand that. I've always been the filler type role where it's just like whatever you need me to come as to complete a party or complete a strategy, like I'll fill that particular role.
Yeah, you're always a awesome person at being able to fill whatever role, and you fill it very well, no matter what the role is. Like, if we need a healer, you're there. If we need a Corsair for Dynamis, you're there. Like, these are things that you're able to do that you've done many times and you do very well. So it's like we rely on these things from you.
But aside from all the fun and adventures that we've been having, we got a topic that we have going on here, and I know it's your favorite topic. You're so excited to talk about this one.
I feel it is abysmal.
So many puns today.
I'm feeling very punny, if you will.
Yeah,
I told
definitely.
you I'm optimistic. I'm optimistic, even though this is the era where I took a break, and I'm not. Just gonna go out on a limb and say, I took a break during this time, but I'm still optimistic because I see a lot of things that have happened, and it's what brought us to the game where it is today. So can't see it all bad.
So the topic of today is Abyssea. And so we're going to talk about all the ins and outs of Abyssea, things that came from Abyssea that may have been, like Carm said, forgotten about or wasn't realized that it was done during that time frame. So let's dive right in with the first of the 3 add-on expansions that came out in June 22nd
Dive
of
right into the
2010.
abyss.
Yes, with Visions of Abyssea. Hooray! So when this expansion came out, 3 Ma's appeared in Conchot Highlands, Lithen Plateau, and Taranji Canyon, and people were all of a sudden getting this weird cutscene in Port Juno where Joachim was just like, hey, you passed out on the ground. What is wrong with you? Oh, wait, you saw something. We know what this is. Let's talk about it. And then tells you to go adventure out into these Ma's, which was weird at first. Because usually when you saw the Ma's, it was in regards to Wings of the Goddess and going into the past, but you were going into an like alternative dimension of Conchot Highlands, Lithen Plateau, and Taranji Canyon. And the first thing you noticed is it tells you that you need to get visitant status, and you're just like, what's this? So you go talk over to the NPC, and they're like, oh, you have a traverser stone. Here's your 30 minutes inside the zone. And you're just like, what? I only get 30 minutes with a 20-hour respawn of these traverser stones, like that's not really that great. So you went out and you tried to explore. You saw there were like pockets of different monsters, and some had NMs that were just roaming around in them. And you're just like, what? Like Mangy Tailed Marvin was the first NM I saw in Lathen Plateau, and
Oh,
he wrecked my shit so fast. Oh, he was just not fun at all. Ended up farming him later on because he dropped the Orison Cape, which was the first of many accessories that would be coming out in Abyssea. That one was specifically for White Mage. It was just like, I need to get this cape. And it never wanted to drop for me after I saw one person get it. So it was so much fun
that's
afterwards.
that's the bunny that we kited around the wall for like forever, yeah?
Yeah, we were doing scholar strats because if we threw DDs at it, he would just
Oh.
counter our face over and over again. Yeah, that bunny.
I knew you had chosen a horrible NM for the first one, but
I
gosh.
I didn't know, it was the first thing I ran into because the buddies really aren't that far from the entrance in the Fen Plateau. I mean, we were still trying to figure out how to activate the complexes that were spread out. And if you ever watch my streams and you see me pull up a map of any of the Abyssea zones, you'll see I have markers of where all the complexes are. Because they never updated the Abyssea maps to show those complexes. Like you can see where all the waypoints are, you can see where the mods are in all of the current zones and in Adulan. Nope, they don't show you where those complexes are. So I have them all marked on my map from way back in the Abyssea era.
Yeah, I did play some when it first started. I wasn't one of like the first to go in the zone, but once everybody started really understanding how the XP parties and stuff was like, okay, I'll go check this out. And I did a few Ambuscade XP parties, and I remember
Ambuscade.
running or Ambuscade, Abyssea. I try to not say the word. I, I avoid that word, but it's okay. Um, but yeah, I definitely did a few parties, and it was okay. It was okay. It was a good time.
Well, it was unusual in that time because those parties that you were talking about were 18-man parties. They weren't little 6-man parties. Everyone grouped up together and were just running in all directions, killing different mobs. I mean, in Lathen Plateau, a very common camp was the worms, and then you had buggards in Conshot Highlands, and then bats or the little floating heads in Gerongi Canyon.
Bats was the first one I did. The big
Oh,
bats, the
oh, the
big
big
red
bats.
bats.
Yeah. And the term key horrors or box horrors started coming out at that time because people found out that they could exchange crew ore for the forbidden keys, or instead of playing the little mini games on each of the chests. So they would give people the time extensions, the experience, the additional crew ore, and then like as parties were even progressing further, they realized that they could get augmented items in gold boxes, and then all of a sudden people started flooding to Conshot Highlands for the Buggard camp because they wanted the dark rings that were coming out of those boxes. It was kind of crazy. But at the same
Yeah, I
time,
never did the whole box horror, whatever key horror thing. Yeah, I never did that job. I felt like it was leeching, but that's just me. But it
I
needed
did
somebody to do it.
Yeah, I did it on Scholar, was the only job I did it on. Because I didn't have a nuking job at the time and really wanted to play Scholar. So I was part of that bandwagon for at least one of my one of my many jobs that I play. But also these parties were popping up because you had the level cap increases. I mean, we went from 75 to 80, and I mean they hadn't seen level cap increases in years since 75 became the new cap. So this was also really different. You had a lot of new abilities coming out, new job traits were being added to the game. Uh, it was just a slew of trying to figure out what everything did.
Yeah, I mean, look at all the different things that started popping up. You talk about things that are used today, like restraint, perfect counter, Divine Benison, like Mana Wall, all of these things are relevant today, and starting to pop up, and they all started from this era.
Yeah, one of the things that also came from this era was the fencer ability and warrior, and trying to actually bring single wielding into just the aspect of the game for warrior, because a lot of the times it was just you're using a great axe on warrior and that's all you used because it had higher DPS than single wielding or dual wielding on that job. So that actually gave a huge boost in regards to adding another form of DPS that could be close to on par to a two-handed weapon user.
Yeah. Other things that kind of popped up that were big. See, double shot for Ranger. That was a big one. Second Noki going down to level 40 from level 60. That was huge at the time. Because then once you got to 80, you could actually sub it and have second Noki. So
Yeah, and
that was
then
kind of cool.
also all of these conserve TP bonuses being given to different jobs. I mean, conserve TP being similar to conserve MP, where you would just be able to reduce the amount of TP used on a weapon skill, really boosted Ranger and Samurai, or not Samurai, Dragoons TP feed, not feed, but conservation, and just being able to shoot out as much weapon skills as possible. It's just crazy seeing Dragoon's DPS with how many skill chains they can just throw out there.
Like this note on Corsair. Duration of Corsair roll when hitting an 11 was increased to 10 minutes. This was quickly lowered to 5.
Because that was just a little crazy, especially in those huge parties where you just had people running everywhere and having it last so long. You just basically you could have one of the key whores or box whores just come as a Corsair and just give Corsair's roll and just sit there and keep opening boxes over and over again. But people didn't really know what was causing certain boxes to appear at the time, or why sometimes you would get 100 experience instead of 1,000 experience. Like, it was very much trial and error with trying to figure out Abyssea's mechanics in this first expansion, and just seeing why people were crowding to certain areas for killing these monsters. And eventually they figured out that certain lights controlled certain things within Abyssea, like pearlescent lights, which was determined to be obtained through just auto killing a mob, so just letting your weapon swing at it to destroy it, would make more boxes appear more frequently the higher this light became. And then Azure light was obtained with killing monsters with magic. So you usually wanted to have some magic users in the party so that way they could do this certain light, because they found out this one gave a higher chance of obtaining blue boxes, which is the box that people wanted the most because it had the time extensions in it. It gave you the EXP, it gave you the Crore. It basically helped everybody level up faster and be able to buy the forbidden keys or buy eventually Atmas that were found due to progression from things outside of Abyssea. And then this was yelled so much. Eventually, people found out what ruby lights did, which was obtained through weapon skill or physical weapon skill killing monsters. And it was very commonly heard to, if you were at a party and you got ruby light, just floods of party messages being like, no weapon skilling, don't weapon skill kill these mobs. Ruby is so bad. No ruby. Over and over again, because these boxes are the red boxes and they typically only provided increased lights inside these boxes, but they could take the place of a blue box. So if you started getting too much ruby, you would see less blue boxes and more red boxes. So people would get really angry about it. But one of the things that came in the ruby boxes was gold and silver lights. Gold lights could increase the experience you got just from killing monsters, and silverly light could increase the amount of Crore you got from killing monsters, not just from what you were getting inside the blue boxes. I know when people have watched me stream doing Empyrean farming, they've probably heard me talking about amber lights. And people found out amber lights were obtained through killing monsters with elemental weapon skills. And this one was kind of not really known what it did back in the day, because it wasn't as important as it was later on. They did find out that as they got more amber light, that they could find these augmented items in them at a certain point, but eventually those augmented items would go away and just turn into temporary items. So it was trying to also find that balance of, oh, I need so many amber light to be able to help us continuously get these dark rings with augments that we could eventually find like the perfect augmented one, which had like physical damage taken minus, magic damage taken minus, and breath damage taken minus all on one ring.
I've actually seen people still wear their dark rings to this day.
Yeah, they were really good. I mean, it was very impressive, but they are very hard to get. Even to this day, like trying to find a really good augmented one can take a lot of time. Eventually, in further expansions, we'll talk about how people were using these for Empyrean weapons and also in regards to obtaining Empyrean feet as well too. One that people still aren't quite sure about, like they kind of get it, but they're not really sure, is Ebon lights. This is another one that you got only in red boxes, but you could also get it from killing NMs in general. This light would increase all your lights, but it's considered a separate calculation. So when you rest in Abyssea, you'll see it says Ebon light and then it'll have the number next to it. It's not like it adds directly to the lights themselves. But what it does do is it does take that number and it does add it to the other ones separately. So if you're working on getting key items and you're killing the NMs, you're like, my amber light's perfect. And then eventually you're like, I'm all of a sudden not getting key items for NMs anymore. I'm only getting temp items. It's because your Ebon light has now grown so high that it's increased your amber light to then surpass the threshold for getting those key items. And that's where a lot of people are like, oh, I hate this light, but you can't do anything about it because as you're farming, you're going to inevitably get this one. So people have to figure out the balance of where to put their amber light versus how much Ebon light they're getting.
Yeah, kind of looking at everything, you're like, wow, they really did put a lot of thought into this system. Okay, I see what they're doing. I mean, it's not one of those where you just go in and spam every single light until it's capped and then, okay, I can just do everything now. No, you have to actually pay attention to what lights you are getting.
Yeah, and there were certain mobs in the zones that didn't give certain lights. And that's why those camps decided to appear in certain places. Like bats, you could not get ruby light at all. So people would gravitate to those specific mobs that didn't give ruby light. So that way they didn't have to worry about if people weapon skilled and killed a mob on accident or on purpose, because they wouldn't have to worry about it. I mean, you can still get red boxes even if you don't have any ruby light. It's still a chance, but it's way lower if you have zero comparatively to having it capped.
Yeah, by the time I started joining in parties, it was pretty much all bats. Everybody wanted the bats.
All the bats.
All the bats.
And then as
I'm
people
Batman.
got as people started getting more time in this zone, not through traverse zones, they noticed if they had over 200 minutes and left the zone and came back, it was capped at 120. So a lot of people would be like, "Oh, I need to do something else with my time just to before I leave the zone, so that way I don't waste all this time that I've gotten." And some people would just AFK in parties and just come back the next day because so much time was given. Um, but they started really expanding into the mobs and the NMs that were in the zones. They're like, okay, these mobs drop this item. There's a question mark near the mobs. Maybe the item correlates with this question mark, and then they'd spawn the NM, and then they're just like, what the fuck is this thing? And then they try to fight it. But while fighting it, they noticed certain things would provide different procs. Like all of a sudden there'd be yellow exclamation points and then blue exclamation points and then red exclamation points. And they're just in there like, what does it mean? So that was a whole nother aspect of Abyssea that people ended up having to learn. There's a great breakdown of this procking system on BG Wiki that talks about how you can obtain these different procs, what type of weapons you need, magic you need, all sorts, and even what they do. But we're going to go over them as well too. People were finding out that yellow procs, so the yellow exclamation points that were popping up, was based off of casting certain spells based off of the time of day. So if it was Fire's Day, it would be all fire type spells. So Fire 3, Fire 4, Flare were coming up. You started seeing people bringing Black Mage sub bards because they had 5 of the 7 different spells, and typically there was already a ninja in party, so a lot of people didn't have to worry about needing those spells as well. The only one that people took a risk on was needing the blue spells, which were really obscure blue spells from when I was remembering and reading the list over again. So people just didn't bring blue mages because they were trying to low man these as much as possible and just try to do everything with the least amount of people. There were still link shells that did Abyssea, but as the content went on, they did shrink down. People were noticing that this yellow proc would help getting crafting materials or spells to drop off of these early mobs. Eventually, when the Empyrean armor comes out, people were noticing this increased the seal drops for these Empyrean armor pieces. So they really wanted to bring black mages that were subbard and ninjas to these parties just to make sure that they got those drops.
Yellow
Then
procs
you also
sucked. I still hate
they
yellow
did.
procs. I still hate them
Yeah.
to this day.
Well, I mean, not a lot of people use the yellow procking anymore. They just would rather pop and drop mobs, because a lot of people now would just blow up the mobs trying to do yellow procs. Because you would have to literally do 0 gear in order to make sure you didn't kill mobs with the spells with how much gear is out nowadays. But
Or
then it
you can
wasn't
get
so
some coupon
bad.
eye seals.
Oh, coupon ice seals, they're a lifesaver. And
They
that
saved me
campaign,
from yellow procs.
yay, don't worry about yellow procs. Don't worry about even walking into Abyssea at all. Just go get coupon seals. They're so fantastic. The other thing people started noticing is the blue exclamation points were coming from different weapon types. So piercing, slashing, blunt type damage. And it took a while to figure out which one was falling where, and they eventually found out it was based off of game time. So during certain hours of the day in game would determine if it was piercing, slash, or blunt. And people were finding out that this particular proc was helping for rare drops. So in regards to like armor pieces or nothing in regards to Empyreans for this one. So like if you were trying to get Empyrean weapon drops, this wasn't considered a rare drop. It was more in regards to like the armor, those sort of pieces. So one of the most common ones at the time of this first expansion was the Loki's Kaftan off of the Empyrean mob that was just flying around the zone, like kind of taunting you in the buggered camp. It was kind of funny. In Conshot Highlands, a lot of people got wrecked by him, and he was an interesting mob to fight at the time. I don't know if you remember fighting him back in the day, Carm.
No, that one I don't remember. I do remember kiting an amphitheater in one of the zones, but this wasn't him. And we were trying to blue proc it as well.
You might be thinking of the one in Misero Coast,
It's
just down in
possible.
that birds.
I don't
And
remember.
then, yeah. And then what became a huge significant proc during this time was red procs, and that was done through specific elemental weapon skills. Unlike the last two, which were based off of time and day, this one, it was just completely random on which one it would be. And so people were having to bring warriors and ninjas that had both sides of these procs in order to figure out red, because this would give you atmas from different NMs that can enhance you throughout Abyssea. They could also give you abyssites that could help either increase your crew gain or give you even more experience while inside these zones. Give you more chances to guess boxes correctly. So people were like red procs or the shit to do. Uh, and still are today. People still use red procking systems just to make sure they get the key item to upgrade to another NM if they want.
Yeah, I love that Ninja can do every single red proc. It makes life so easy.
Yeah, they can now. Before they couldn't at the time. They didn't have access to a lot of the different weapons. And during that time, they didn't have login campaigns in order to give you different weapons that were just one damage weapon lock style pieces. Like you
Mhm.
had to do old events, like the Halloween event to get you the treat staff or the pitchfork at the time because those were the only low damage staves and pole arms that you could use to help with procking without
Well,
killing much.
I mean, there were still the Signet staffs.
That's true if you were rank 10 and you could
Yeah.
purchase a signet staff.
Was the Retrace staff out at the time too?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, those ones were easy enough, but I think also the addition of higher level warrior sub helped out a lot too, because you'd have to sub warrior on Ninja to get some of these procs, like your pole arm and some of the sword ones.
But like I don't think there's a scythe at the time that Abyssea was out that ninja could wear, but warrior could wear a scythe.
That's probably accurate because we have to either use the gardening one, or I think there is a one event one that we can use.
There was the lost oh, I can't remember what it's called. It's a weird looking scythe that they came out a while ago, but it wasn't during the Abyssea era that it was out. It's like one of the few one damaging scythes, other than the Archangel one, which was a costume one that came out event like a while afterwards too.
Not the Archangel 999 delays.
Yep. um,
That
it was
sword
what was
plagued me
also
for so long.
yes, it did. One of the other things that came out with this first add-on was new weapon skills were added. Some names that people don't realize came out during this era was Cataclysm, Aeolian Edge, Fell Cleave, and Sanguine Blade. Were introduced and that you could obtain with leveling up your particular weapons. I mean, some of these weapon skills are even still used today.
Yeah, I know I think the first hybrid one for Ninja, well, not the first hybrid one, but one of the ones, I think it's Blade U or something.
Hmm.
I think
The
that,
like water splashing
yeah,
one.
it's a water splashing one. It came out and it's still used in skill chains today. So hybrid weapon skills are pretty legit.
Yeah, and Felcleave became really big further down the road in Abyssea because a lot of people were using warriors for a lot of things, and being able to Felcleave lots of mobs and just be able to get lots of boxes very quickly became a norm. And thieves were doing Aeolian Edge. Cataclysm wasn't used quite as much during that time because sadly, dark elemental based weapon skills were not very good. Even lead and salute. This is probably mind blowing for some people. Lead and salute was a terrible weapon skill way back when.
Yeah, it was pretty
It,
bad.
yeah, it didn't get fixed. I think it got fixed in the Adulan era. It didn't get fixed in the Abyssea era.
For the
Um,
longest time, I feel like Corsair was a crappy bard. I remember thinking of Corsair as almost like a crappy bard. I don't know. That's just
its
how.
DPS was pretty lackluster because
Yeah.
Rangers out DPS'd it in range classes, and they didn't really have very good weapon capabilities because they didn't have dual wield, so they always had to sub if they wanted to dual wield. I mean, they still do today, but just their weapon choices and the weapon skills that they obtained weren't fantastic. So they were pretty lackluster back then. Eventually, they, as you can tell, they get really big, but at this
Oh
time,
yeah.
they were still kind of. They were just rollers. That's all they did. They just rolled.
That was
It was
also kind
fine.
of back when it was a lot of raw damage, and you brought a bard because it was a bard, but you weren't really worried about buffs or p-diff or anything that we like think about today and all the different defense downs, and it hadn't really become the in-depth battle system that we have now and all the different things we think about in a party setup.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, another thing that was starting to come out is people were noticing a new Trial of Magian trials coming out for each weapon type, and eventually learning that these were Empyrean weapons. And so people could make level 80 Empyrean weapons to get synced up with the current ones they had. I mean, at the time they didn't look that great because they were just straight stats similar to the relics and mythics at the time, but they didn't have any aftermaths, they didn't have any cool weapon skills attached to them, so some people were hesitant in starting their Empyreans. There were also a secondary path for a pseudo Empyrean weapon that was easier for people to make if they wanted to than the actual Empyrean path, because some of those NMs were scary. I mean, Glavoid was one of the ones that was used, and he was a nightmare. You would literally watch different parties because there was only one spawn point for him. But you'd watch different link shells parties, just watching groups stare down Glavoid and just being like, watch them die, watch them die, watch them die, get ready to claim, get ready to claim. Because you were literally in battle with a lot of people trying to steal mobs during that time because of it only being one spawn and literally having to wait, watch people take 20 minutes to 30 minutes to kill a mob, or just watch it get bounced back and forth between different groups. Blockade was a huge thing being used in Abyssea because people would try doing the cure cheat where you would cure somebody, and eventually that healer would pull hate or that tank would pull hate and the mob would chase them and they'd run it away just to get it to unclaim so that way their group could grab it. It was ferocious. Kukulkan was another one, which
Yep.
was the Peist in
Gross.
Hanshut Highland, which people also hated because his gaze was terrible. And then you had Bararius, which would one-shot people way back when, because he would just happen to crack the 999, or I think it was the 7. If he pulled a 7, he would destroy a party if you were in his directional path. So people loved ninja tanks for Bararius, but these were NMs that were very difficult when they first came out, and Empyrean weapons were attached to some of these NMs, and it kind of deterred people a little bit at first with these.
Yeah, Empyreans are they're a different breed. I mean, it's not like that bad. Even now today, farming, I'm sure it wasn't really enjoyable back in the day, but still kind of right now it's just a grind to go through and kill all these Abyssea mobs, and you get to spend your time in Abyssea. Then you kind of sit there and debate, do I want to sit there and get my lights up so I don't have to leave and come back in? And also you can do the NM key item farming right now for Empyreans, so it's a slog.
Yeah, and that's what people were learning. And the difference between now and then was then you had groups. So you had multiple people, either they were farming boxes or they were actually going after the NMs, building up all these different key items. So if you saw multiple key items coming from the gold boxes, you were just like, oh, who doesn't have this key item? And then they would go and grab it from the box. Or it's like, okay, who's missing this NM? It's about to spawn, or we got the pop item for it, come over here, sort of thing. And it was much easier to build pops during the Abyssea era just because there were so many people involved and willing to help out with it. While nowadays it's basically a solo endeavor, nobody really likes doing it. They think it's a terrible system. But that's why it was so great during that time, because it was a group effort for it.
Yeah, it was the new thing. It was like the cool thing to do. You go to Abyssea and just hang out with the group, and I mean that's where you experience the content in this game. That's the way you do it. So yeah, I mean it's kind of like Odyssey today. I mean, pretty much everybody hangs out in Rabaul, hangs out around the conflux, and waits for time to do Odyssey. This is what Abyssea was. It was that time.
Yeah, and as people were fighting these NMs, they found out that there were two NMs in Conshot Highlands that you could get a key item called an Azure Abyssite of Celerity, and it reduced the timer for your Traverser Stones by 4 hours. So instead of having to wait 20 hours for a Traverser Stone to come back, you would only need to wait 16 hours, which doesn't sound like much, but over time, it really did help. And so people were like, okay, that's actually really cool. And then they started going after these two NMs. Now, they didn't stack, so you could fight one or the other NM. But if I remember this NM specifically, they are kind of a group thing anyway. So you were going to end up fighting both of them.
Makes sense.
And then shortly afterwards, these expansions really came out back to back. In September of 2010, the second installment came out, which was called Scars of Abyssea. And this one threw people kind of through a loop because they were watching the video and they could tell like one of the zones was Ottawa Chasm, and then one looked like Misero Coast. So people booked it over to those zones looking for the Maws, but then realized the Maws weren't there. And then people were reporting that they saw Maws in Valkram Dunes, Bummerimo Peninsula, and Jugner Forest. And then eventually learned that's where Abyssea Misero, Ottawa, and Bunkrel actually were. So unlike the first one, where they were inside their actual zones that you would teleport to, these ones were not. They were in completely different areas. With this new expansion, though, Empyrean armor started appearing. So you saw the head, feet, and legs coming out. And my goodness, white mages were so happy and so broken. um, but other people felt like their Empyrean wasn't that great. And then others were just like, this takes over everything. Like Warrior Empyrean was, my goodness, it was so good. I don't remember about the ninja one how good it was, but I do remember seeing a lot of people, a lot of ninjas wearing it. So I want to say it was good during the time. I think you were gone by the time the second expansion came out, so I don't know if you remember.
I was. And yeah, a lot of the time that I was playing, I think I was gone by Scars, but even when I was playing before, I wasn't really playing Ninja. I was playing a lot of Red Mage. Yeah, I don't know too much about the Ninja Empyrean. Even today, it's kind of meh. I mean, the Utah Semi on the feed is pretty nice. It's kind of necessary, but other than that, it's macro pieces.
Yeah, I know Dancer Empyrean was also another like holy shit broken one. Black Mage was another really good one. Summoners. I mean, the Empyrean was really good overall, but some people just felt like theirs wasn't to the standards of the other ones that were held. But also, it was interesting trying to learn how do you get these Empyreans. Like I said, people were doing the parties again. They had to move from the original 3 zones to the new one. So you started seeing Calibri camps in Misero. You started seeing the Cockatrice camps in Ottawa. And then you started seeing I want to say it was the bats in Bunkrel, but it might have been something else. Murexes were another really big one in Bunkrel. People were fighting these and they were noticing Empyrean feet were dropping in the gold boxes. So while yes, they were still getting the augmented items like diamond rings, and Bunkrel became huge with their augments for a while. But the Empyrean feet became a huge fiasco because only certain feet dropped in certain zones. So people eventually learned that. But the box and key whores were taking the feet out of the boxes. And there wasn't an option to put gold boxes into the treasure pool. It was if you opened it and you saw it, they took it, sort of thing, which became a huge problem because it would pop up a message saying, so and so obtained Orson feet if you were in Ottawa, sort of thing. And then huge outrage would go in through the party being like, why are you taking these? Like, why didn't you say them? Eventually people started calling them out, but then it was like a rush over to figure out which gold box had the feet in them. So it was a very crazy time trying to get your Empyrean feet. Your
Sounds
Empyrean
like a free
head,
for all.
yeah, it really was. It was kind of crazy, which is probably why I tried leveling Scholar during the time to be one of those people just to try to get my Empyrean feet because it was bat crazy. Um, and then headpieces were obtained through the Kruror prospectors. You could just go up to them and you could buy them with Kruror. And then legs were obtained through a new event that had come out during this time called Bastion. And it was kind of like a tower defense um, type system. You would go sign up for Bastion, and then waves of salvage type mobs. So you would see gears, you would see the chariots, you would see what else was there? I guess this wasn't really a salvage mob, but you would see the old the mechs that would fall apart after they take so much damage. I forget what the heck they're called. But they were just coming at you in waves, and you had to try to defend your base from all of these or cure the NPCs that were trying to defend the base just to build up what was called resistance points. So that way you could eventually purchase your Empyrean legs. So many white mages were doing Bastion in Ottawa so that way they could get the legs, because after somebody had upgraded them, figuring out the seal system was just huge. They're just like, what? I can gain MP for curing people? Like, what? Like, that was crazy. But then also the plus twos were another thing to try to figure out altogether, and figuring out which bosses dropped which certain stones or cards or whatever was needed in order to upgrade them again was a whole nother feat in themselves, and people were figuring this out and fighting over different NMs, and then more accessories were coming out, like the Cataract at the top of the mountain in Ottawa, which had a completely different path than the original mountain in Ottawa, which was a whole nother thing to learn. The Cataract would kick people's butt all the time. You'd fall down the mountain, and then it would fall down with you and then still destroy your party. But it dropped the best red mage cape at the time. And like everybody wanted the red mage cape that came off of that NM. So people were fighting over that. Lots of fighting in Abyssea for mobs constantly.
It kind of seems that way. There seems to be a trend here. You know, I'm picturing the devs like just sitting there like the evil puppet maker, something, dance, my children, dance, or something. And like, even when they started this expansion, they're like, yes, we will release images of Misero Coast and Ottawa and of Funkerl, and maybe they will go straight there and they'll never find it, and we will laugh as they, ha ha ha, you have to go looking for it in other zones. Like, I just see the devs sitting there like as a maniacal puppet master, dance, my children, and all this stuff. Like, that's all I can see, and it's, yeah,
well,
it was a weird time.
At the same time, the players kind of got back at the devs for a little bit, because the Chocobo Blinker exploits started at this time. So people were doing certain quests that gave players Chocobo Blinkers. So you didn't have to make them.
I don't even know what a Chocobo Blinker is.
It's used to extend your duration of your Chocobo you're riding. So only people that did Chocobo racing like actually use these, and they were for the actual quests, but people wouldn't do the quests. They just got the Chocobo blinkers and then they'd go NPC them, and they NPC'd for a lot at the time. So there were just huge amounts of waves of people buying or getting these Chocobo blinkers to resell and then to do it again over and over again. And people made lots of gil at the time. So much gil that there was an emergency patch to reduce how much Chocobo blinkers NPC'd for.
Sounds like
because
the Sparks exploit, but worse.
Yeah. So many people were doing it. So that didn't calm down. I think it took them until the next expansion, though, before they stopped the Chocobo Blinker exploit. Probably because in the next expansions where it really got big, like people that found out about Chocobo Blinker exploit, like kept it to themselves for a while. But there were people that ended up like creating additional characters just to keep doing the exploit while it was available. Like it really grew to another thing. And then people found out doing other quests. There was a specific quest, oddly called the Quest Wither the Whisker, which provided another Abyssite of Celerity called the Crimson Abyssite of Celerity, which then again lowered your Traverser Zone timer by another 4 hours. And it stacked with the previous Azure one. So now instead of 16 hours, it would now be 12 hours. So you'd get 2 stones every day. Which made people happier as well too.
Woo!
Also with this expansion, you had an increase to level 85, so we had another wave of job adjustments with new job abilities and job traits.
Yeah, here comes the fun. Occult Acumen, Aspirate 2, Divine Caress, Saboteur, Thief getting dual wield. Jeez. This was kind of nutty. Skill chain bonus on Dark Knight. That's pretty cool. Yeah. Bard gets Fencer. Woohoo. Earth and
This is
Armor.
where,
That's pretty good right there. That's pretty good.
yeah, Heiska came out during this time as well too. Or sorry, not Heiska. The the increased time of all the buffing blood packs, so Heiska, Glittering Ruby, Crimson Roar, were extended based off of your summoning magic skill. So more people were trying to stack on summoning magic skill at the time, which is why the Empyrean armor for summoner does actually have quite a bit of summoning magic skill on it, was because they started implementing this sort of mechanic to summoner.
Boy, Dancer sure got some nice stuff here. I mean, Feather Step's pretty cool. But Presto
Yeah,
Change is hello.
Yeah, when Presto came out in the first Abyssea expansion, it basically took the place of another step. So a lot of people didn't use it because they're like, if it's going to give me 2 steps worth, why don't I just use 2 steps? Because it took up the timer of your step delay anyway. But then they changed it to where it no longer did, and they lowered the recast of it so that way you could use it and then instantly use a step. So then it became more primitive to actually using it. And then they also came out with Feather Step, which helped lower magic defense on mobs, which was great.
When did they come out with Level Sync?
Level Sync was before the Abyssea era.
Was it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was during
That's
the
right.
Wings of the Goddess era that they came out with
But
Abyssea.
this was a
Or
cool
Level Sync.
change to Puppet Master that they did here with Deus Ex Automata being brought in, which was really, really kind of cool to have. But the level restriction not taking away activate, or if it deactivates your automaton, activate is immediately usable if the automaton was full or nearly full health. That's pretty dang cool.
Yeah,
That
what
helps help a
also
lot, I think.
Yeah. What also came out was a lot of the spells that were released during this time was huge. I mean, you had Refresh 2, you had Full Lullaby 2 coming out, and then you had Mage's Ballad 3 coming out at this time too.
Break.
So these Yep, Break came out, Shirzo was also coming out, and these were spells that were being found in these boxes. I mean, End Light and End Dark, finding out what the hidden effects were for those, like End Light giving accuracy for paladins, while End Dark giving attack for dark knights, was pretty crazy at the same time.
Yeah, and Light's an insane spell. Oh, it's so good.
Yeah, and also giving divine caress to white mages and not having to cast Paralina over and over again, like just stacking those two to have a resistance on that specific debuff was so nice.
Yeah, Divine Caress, I feel like, is really underutilized, and a lot of people should definitely pay attention to that one because it can really help when a certain status effect is being applied over and over, like Curse.
Yeah, it can
Curse is a
help with
big one.
curse. You can
Paralyzed.
also get it to use for Doom effects too. If you can get Doom off of the first attempt with Caress active, you can actually reduce the chance of getting doomed
Oh,
again the
high
next
risk,
time.
high reward. I like it. A
Yeah.
gambler, if you will. But
Yep.
if
So
you
that's
have
why it's like,
if you have Gambit time,
yeah, if you get it all the way upgraded and get it afterglowed, you can get the Curse Now plus 100 on Gambentine, which is why I'm working on it. I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna get it done eventually.
you're a foul creature.
It's on my list of things to do.
You're working on like 9 Remas right now.
I know. I have a laundry list of things to make.
Hey,
I'm getting
how's
them done
a
slowly.
here's a throwback for you. How's Claire's the
The coalitions?
coalition's
Oh, they
going?
haven't
Yeah.
moved.
Oh,
I
okay.
haven't touched them.
Excellent.
You're
I could
welcome.
I kind of figured
They're
that,
still
but
backburnered. Yeah. Nope, they're still back there. She doesn't need anything. She's fine. It's fine. She doesn't need the
yeah,
+1 ring.
everything's
Great.
okay. Everything's okay.
Yep. But there really wasn't that much like brand new in Scars. I mean, people had figured out the procking system by this time. They had figured out the light system because people spent so much time between June and September figuring it all out in the first expansion. But people were starting to realize that level 85 Empyreans were now starting to be released, and they had really cool weapon skills attached to them. Uko's Fury was heavily broken. Rudra Storm was broken. Victory Smite was broken. Blade High was actually broken at the time. So
And
people
now it's
were
crap.
well, and then also Fudo was broken, so a lot of
Still
Masamune were
is.
appearing. So there were just a lot of people that were like, "Oh, these Empyrean weapons beat Relic and Mythics without their trials, so I'm just going to go work on these Empyrean weapons." And you started seeing Empyrean weapons coming up left and right. And the original complaint of, "Oh, Empyrean weapons are difficult to do because these NMs are horrible." The new NMs weren't that much better. Like, Itzapatawaddle was a beast in himself. You had the buggered, I can't even remember their
Can you
name all
say
of a
that name
sudden.
again?
Itzapatawaddle?
Thank you.
You're welcome. It's
I
the
just
moth in
enjoyed it.
Ottawa Chasm. Uh, you have to use them to get some of your Empyrean upgrades if you want to reforge them, BT dubs. The sandworm
Hold
is.
on. I gotta hear it one more time.
I'm not going to humor you the third
Hold
time.
on. One more time. Third time's the
No,
charm.
I need you to try to say it now.
I don't think I can. It's not as cool coming from me. Come on, one more
No,
time.
no, I'm not going to do it.
Come on, one more
But a
time.
lot of people no. But people were starting to learn these mechanics for these NMs, and really they were flying through making Empyreans weapons at this time. Like, procking system got them down pat, got all of the gold box farmings down pat, and the methods in regards to doing that. Especially because a lot of the NM key items were appearing in gold boxes for like the big specific ones. Like if you go farm Masamune and you're going for CC in Mizuro Coast, all of his key items are in boxes. So you don't even have to find. Oh my gosh, farming that stupid frog was worse than it is now. But you could get the frog's key item in gold boxes, so you could just completely ignore farming that and fighting all the people for it.
So on that note,
Uh-huh.
I think we could make a video of you farming all those things for me because that's the stage I'm on in Mesa.
Ah, I've already made videos of me farming Farsha and Gambentine in doing Buckus. So I mean it's the same concept.
I don't know.
I'm
I
just
think we need one more.
I can do a gold boxing farming video and do it in the two zones because gold boxing in the scar zones is definitely different than farming gold boxes in the next expansion. And we'll go over that when we actually talk about it. But so with the Empyrean weapons coming and so many people having them, it was just people who made mythics and relics felt kind of cheaped out. Not so much as they will later, but it was just like they were trying to do their trial of Magians, which were not favorable at all for relics and mythics. You can ask Mur anytime about how Terpsichore trials were back during the Abyssea era, and he will tell you how terrible they were. He hated it. He ended up working on a couple of Empyreans himself during the time just because those trials were horrible. I hear Relics was really bad as well too, because you still had to go into the Dynamis zones and kill the NM so many times, and this was before Rhapsodies came out, where you got key items that let you just pop in and out of that zone, where you had time restrictions on how often you could go in there. And so it was just really horrible, and a lot of people were so pissed. But eventually, it all comes around, and they all became equal. But at this time, Empyreans were reigning supreme.
Yeah, let's watch the equal word. I still think relic weapon skills need some help. I think a lot of the relics need some help, but
We're being positive here, Carm. Positivity.
That's very positive. Like, they're still cool, they're still nostalgic, but it's being straight up that they just need a little help and they need to give them a little more oomph.
Yeah, I can agree with that. Um,
They're still fun. They're still fun to look at.
yes.
I think Blade Metsu is fantastic. It's even good. I think Kikoku's a fantastic weapon for ninja in this month's ambuscade.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I know you were talking about how much you loved using Kikoku in this month's ambuscade, so don't complain about relics.
Yeah.
They're good.
Yeah, you're doing straight nines with your weapon skills anyway, so why not use a weapon that can hit for triple the damage on an auto?
Yeah.
I mean, sure,
sure.
it's a good Empyrean month, but Ninja Empyrean kind of lays an egg, so.
Go get Kanagi and then go try it. I'm just kidding.
I would rather lay an egg.
Oh, but it's so easy to get Kanagi.
I would
That path
rather
is not
say
bad.
it's a pot of waddle.
It's so much fun to say his name.
Come on, one more time.
No. Anyway, so there really wasn't that much of a difference other than the level cap increases and then the Empyrean armor and upgrades to the weapons coming out in Scars. Heroes, on the other end, added quite a bit. It was the final expansion that came out for Abyssea. It came out around December of 2010, so not much of a gap from the first one to the second one, but still gave people enough time. There were new areas appearing in Zarkabard, South and North Gusterberg, which was kind of unusual that they stayed in one region for the two new zones, which provided Abyssea, Altepa, Grauberg, and Uligron range. These
Crazy that
new
all of
areas.
these expansions all came out in 2010.
Yep. They came
The
out with these
year of
very quickly.
Abyssea.
Yeah, it sure was. With this expansion came out in the last two Empyrean pieces, which was the body and hands, and also the level cap increase raising to 90, as well as the Empyrean weapons going to 90.
Yee
Uh,
ha.
yeah, and with people, oh, go ahead.
I just remember Abyssea Uligaran because you made me do that stupid white rabbit.
So many rabbits. I knew you would want the
It's always
nostalgia
the
from the
rabbits.
ape-tailed mammoths.
It's
You wanted to go
always the
fighting.
rabbits. It's true that anytime in Final Fantasy XI there is a rabbit that can kill you.
Yep, and it's Wrathhair in Zeta with End Death.
Great. I kind of like him because he kills everybody else, and I'm always on ninja.
That's true. So with these new areas, again, people moved from the original 3 zones in Scars to now the new ones, where they were fighting buffaloes in Uligron Range, they were fighting dolls in Altepa, and then they were fighting either buggards or crabs in Grauberg. And these camps weren't actually specified by their lights, unlike the last two. They were more specified by the Dominion operatives that or operations that were provided during that time, because killing so many of a certain mob got you Dominion ops and the Dominion notes. And the Dominion notes were used to purchase one of your Empyrean pieces at the time. So it was like, okay, just like I needed to do Bastion in the last zone, I need to do Dominion notes here to get my Empyrean body pieces. And the hands you could purchase from a crew or prospector. So that was easy. And then people were, again, going out, figuring out which seals dropped from which NMs. And then, again, the stones, the balances, cars, which ones did those drop off which NMs. So that way they could +2 them. And everybody was flaunting their +2 Empyrean armor because at that point it had slowly progressed to where those were the best in slot pieces. Mainly everybody was using their Empyrean armor at that time. And then
Best in slot. What a time to be alive.
I know. And then level 90 Empyrean weapons were so overly powered that anybody that hadn't started them were now really starting them. And again, people that had made relics and mythics were just still struggling to try to get their trials done and were really upset that eventually they stopped working on their trials just to go make Empyrean weapons. And I used to have a screenshot, and I wish I still did, of during the Heroes time seeing like I was in Port Juno, and there's like 6 samurais standing around all with Masamune on their side because they were just so easy to make at the time because again, gold box farming became a thing. But in unlike Scars where you could get the key items for the bosses, there were no key items for any of the Empyrean bosses in these new zones. What they decided to do instead is because there were usually 2-step NM processes, they would give you the pop items for the first NM that you needed to kill before going to the actual bigger NM. So an example would be in Altepa, you had baby Orthrus is what I called it. So you had the first Cerberus you would fight that you'd need to get the key item from, and then you would pop big Orthrus. And he would give you Orthrus claws. Yeah. He would give you Orthrus claws in order to upgrade Twashtar or Ukanosora if you were working on those. Ukanvasora. Sorry, Mer makes fun of me every time I say that one.
Some really cool job adjustments, though. I mean, this was some good stuff here. Blood Rage. Yeah, Impetus.
Impetus was huge because
yeah.
crits were a really big thing during Abyssea, which is why warriors got Blood Rage, because Blood Rage was basically the crit version of Warcry. So instead of gaining attack, you'd gain increased crit hit rate.
Red Mage got Fire 4 and Blizzard 4. They actually got to feel like they could nuke something.
They got Shield Mastery. I don't know why Red Mage did Shield Mastery, but they got it.
See, that still makes me think Red Mage Paladin is supposed to be a thing. But more on that. Thief got some really cool updates to Treasure Hunter.
Yeah.
Treasure Hunter got some cool changes where it started actually increasing melee attack by the melee attacks and stuff like that.
Yeah, that's when you started seeing the, like, if you got almost like an end light effect going off, it would say your treasure hunter has now increased to 8 or whatever it was at the time of how much gear you had.
Well, if
they
you
also
have
gained
3,
new.
they
And then you
probably
had
only
gear.
they probably only had 6 or 7 at the time.
You had your Empyrean feet, which I think had +2. Then you had your relic hands, which was 1, and then you had the thief's knife, which was another 1. So
so it would have been 7.
7? Yeah, so if you hit it, it would go, it raises to TH8.
Okay, you win this one. Good job. Proud of you. Proud of you. It's a pot of waddle.
It's a pot of waddle. Corsair gained triple shot so they could try to keep up with Rangers. So this is where they started to try to help Corsairs. They also tried to help them with their inventory management with adding trump cards instead of having to carry all 8 elemental cards, which, believe me, was obnoxious. But your inventory was already getting taken up by all of the the seals and the stones and everything for upgrading Empyrean at this time, that your inventory was screwed no matter what. People were trying any way to conserve, which is why a lot of people just started using their Empyrean armor instead of trying to find balances.
Master tools were added. Yeah.
You also had Perpetuance and Eminence added at this time for Scholars, so being able to enhance your enhancing magic skills to make them last longer. They also
we don't talk about Eminence.
We don't. It's okay. But they also gave them access to Aquavale, Bling, Stone Skin, Shell 5, all the spikes, as well as another tier 5 spell at this time, as well as Break, which was huge because then people during this time were really making the Scholar was the new Red Mage joke because of how much they were giving to Scholar, especially with the nuking and curing aspect. While, like you had mentioned earlier, Red Mage was barely getting the tier 4s, while Scholar was getting the tier 5s. Like, they were really becoming known for being well-rounded on Scholar.
Oh, and they just got an extra stratagem here. Like, I mean, Scholar was sitting good in Abyssea.
Yeah,
They
Scholar
were
got huge updates in Abyssea.
Region 4 was added. Like,
Yeah, you got
yeah,
Megawari was added as well too,
that was a good
which
spell.
became huge. Yeah, no, Megawari was definitely huge during Abyssea too, because like I said, you had the buggered NM that would just ram into your face and then you'd get killed trying to make Knoggy. Or you had
Ram into
Brarius.
your face.
Oh my goodness. And then you had Brarius that, of course, like I had mentioned before, I think he would get a 7 and then would kill people, but Megawari would just absorb it, sort of thing. Um, so people were just really starting to see and come up with different aspects. Summoners were also being used a whole lot before Heroes into Scars with the Iron Giants being added. So people started using them a whole lot, and they gave them Mana Seed to increase their blood pack damage as well too. They gave them movement speed in the Scars update, which made them run so much faster because they were so slow.
Fleet Wind.
Yay! Still used today. Dancers really started being the more of the main healers because they gave them Curing Waltz 5 and Striking Flourish as well as 2 was added. But they did end up lowering Curing Waltz 3 just so people could use it as a sub job,
That's
which was
kind of
kind of
nice.
sad. I was a little sad about that, but it made sense.
Yeah, but you're never going to get as much potency sub dancer as a main dancer is going to get.
I mean,
No.
you can get pretty close now with all the gear and
Uh,
augments with Herculean and ambuscade capes,
okay,
and
we
then you
don't
also
talk
unlock.
about Oseam's augments because they don't exist. The time that I have time to go out there and get Waltz potency augments on from Oseam is the day that I do backflips because it means I have everything else that I need.
Yeah, that's true.
The hell with
Another
Oseam.
Another thing with Abyssea, though, is they made it to where the last Abyssite of Celerity could be purchased from a crew or prospector. So instead of having to go fight an NM or go do a quest, they're just like, here, have this Abyssea Abyssite, so that way you could reduce it by 4 hours. So the final count for Traverser Stones was able to get it down to 8 hours. So getting a stone every 8 hours was fantastic comparatively to the original 20-hour time. Most people had, again, already figured out how to gain time in the zone, and with multiple people doing it, it was really easy to keep your time up high. But it was a nice alternative where if you had to leave and come back, you at least were getting your stones pretty quickly.
But for those of you playing at home and doing some simple math, that means you got 3 stones a day. Hey.
Woo! Also, these ones, this was a real surprise. They did release Durdabla and Ochain during this time too. So now not only did you have an instrument, you also had a shield for Empyrean weapons coming out essentially. And Durdabla was huge. Like bards were like, this is the new G horn sort of thing. They're like Durdabla giving an extra song, and then eventually you're gonna get a high enough, then you're like, it gives 2 extra songs after the Abyssea era, but you're like, extra song, I can sing 3 songs. Like, it was crazy, and the opportunities that were coming out with Durdabla. And then Ochain provided a new aspect in that you now had something that could help paladins with physical mobs, because Aegis only helped really with the magic side of things. Ochain could help you with the increased block rate and the reduction for physical damage.
Yeah, Paladin really didn't have a whole lot of options when it came to shields back then. Like nothing close to what we have now. I mean, we have 4 or 5 shields that are at least viable at this point in time. Back then, it was Aegis or some piece of crap, basically.
Yeah, the Archon shields. That's what you had. I'm just kidding. I don't remember what you used to use
Yeah,
back then.
I
I,
have no idea.
it's been so long.
I
But
mean,
as people were
yeah.
progressing, oh sorry.
No, I
Um,
got nothing.
as as people were progressing within Abyssea, they started realizing that there was something else that was added in this expansion that really wasn't talked about. Like there was a small glimpse of it in the trailer of Abyssea where you just saw this huge serpent, but you're like, I don't know what that is. And people that actually paid attention to the storyline, like, saw what mob was in the first cutscene, like, booked it straight there to kill them, and then eventually learned that you had to also kill all of the Cataray before you, and got all of the cutscenes and went and did all the missions. And then Joachim was like, here, have this crimson traverser stone. And you're like, wait, I have to gather new traverser stones? Like, you got a little confused. And he was like, you need to take it to the spot in Quiffam Island. And you went over there, and it wasn't a maw. It was just this little lit up portal. And you're just like, what? And you'd go inside, and you were basically in sea, and you saw Prish there, and you're like, what the heck's going on? And instead of NPCs for the crew or prospectors and the Atma person, you would just have these little orbs like you were back in sea. And you're just like, well, this is really weird. And then you'd go up and you'd find out that this was the true final boss of Abyssea. This was going to take everything that you had gathered from Abyssea, everything that you had learned from Abyssea, and you had to try to fight this thing. And you walk in, you get this cutscene, you have Shinryu laughing at you, being like, you can't take me down because I control all of this. And yeah, he beat people up really bad very quickly, because people were trying to do the proccing system, but like Iron Giants were in the very beginning, people were realizing that Shinryu just moving his arm was him doing a job ability or him doing a TP move. So you had to figure out a way to proc him like you did the Iron Giants in between his swings at you. And then also he would cast magic. He would also do actual standard TP moves that were devastating. I mean, he had the huge AoE Doom, which usually took out people because Kurshna builds weren't as good as they are now. It was a fight, and some people couldn't beat them. And they were looking through their crew lists for temporary items and noticed there was a new item added called a primeval brew. And some people purchased it and used it inside Shinryu's fight. What it did is it raised all your stats to cap, and people were then just being able to kill him really easily this way. But you didn't really get a chance to do the proccing system if you used a primeval brew because you would take him down so fast. So people were having to learn, okay, we need to try to proc it first and then use our primeval brews. And then as people were figuring out the mechanics and actually getting it, less and less people ended up using brews and were using them for other things like Ronnie in Altepa. People hated Ronnie. That's a whole nother story. But
People still hate Ronnie.
I know people still hate her. She's so easy though. But anyway, so people were starting to get Shinryu's drops, and Shinryu's dagger was amazing. His belt was fantastic. His cloak, which gives impact, was the first time people were seeing impact, and his gear was used for a long time after Abyssea, before Adulin was released. So, I mean, it was the goal to get to Shinryu and to start getting his equipment.
And then 12 years later, they made another form of him with gear that's even harder to get.
Yeah, and that's why some people are wondering if we're missing a specific mechanic if they were trying to bring in the proccing system back for Shinryu, since he's basically Shinryu 2.0. But I'm not sure. I know our group hasn't tried. I mean, that's something we can test out maybe when we're streaming one day, just being like, we're going to try Shinryu. We're going to try to see if we can proc it. And then we'll just bring up the proccing list and then try to see if we could do it. I know people nowadays just use Shinryu to farm Mighty Guard because he's still the only mob that uses Mighty Guard, and that's such a great spell.
Yeah, that one's pretty dang good. Kind of must have.
But that's really all about Abyssea. I mean, we didn't go into the nitty gritty of each of the mobs and their mechanics, but just overall, that was the Abyssea era, and I really enjoyed it. I liked that it was kind of a slow build. up between the 3 expansions, rather than like when a Duelan came out and you just felt like, well, everything I had just worked on is now crap. It was just like it incrementally made you stronger.
Yeah, everybody has their own kind of feel about this time, and it obviously wasn't for me. It doesn't mean it wasn't for other people. I mean, that's what this game is about. If you're not enjoying the game, it's time to take a break from it. If you're not enjoying the content that's there, take a break. They're going to come up with something different. I mean, that's what the devs have done for 20 years, is made content that changes and that challenges us in different ways. And I mean, at the end of the day, you're paying a subscription. Enjoy the game.
Yeah, and just try to like play the game with people you enjoy playing with, cuz if you're just jumping into a group and just trying to get content done, sometimes that's not always the best. You want to make sure that you're enjoying the game, you're enjoying who you're playing with, having fun conversations. I mean, if you jump into our stream, we're making fun of each other all the time. We're having a great time. We're laughing, even while we're doing serious content.
Yeah, the game is an experience. We say that all the time at this podcast, and I really like. It's really the point that I want to hammer in with the point that we're doing of this podcast is it's just the enjoyment. We get the enjoyment out of talking about the game. I may not be the smartest person, and I might not be the most knowledgeable person about this game. I might have wrong theories. I might have wrong things that I see. We may not do every strategy to 100% perfection, but the fact is we're playing the game, we're succeeding at the game, and we're having a good time. So it doesn't matter how you play this game. It doesn't matter how you accomplish the final goal that you're out to. It's that you accomplish it.
Yeah, and it's not a race either. Like, take your time, do it at your own pace. If you have to take time away from the game, like Carm said, take that time, get that mental break, get things figured out, and then come back to the game. Just enjoy the time you're playing.
Game is meant to be a game. It's not supposed to be life. I mean, even with Odyssey, where everybody's like, oh, if you join an Odyssey static, you've got to run Odyssey every single night. Blah, 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 blah. I mean, we've been kind of falling behind on Odyssey with all the extra stuff that we're doing, but we're still in a good spot in Odyssey. So you don't have to sit there and spam this stuff into the floor and race to the finish, because we're talking about, again, a 20-year-old game. This content's going to be around for a while. You're going to have time. Make the experiences, meet the new people, join that random link show from the concierge, ask us to jump in our link show, whatever you want to do. I mean, we don't fault anyone for how they play the game. It's just about enjoying the game.
Yeah, and I'm super excited with Empyrean +2 +3 coming out, and potentially the accessories. I mean, I'm excited for the accessories, but I'm curious if they're going to be brand new accessories or if they're going to remake the Abyssea accessories that came out during the Abyssea era, or if they're going to do the old relic accessories, because those accessories hasn't been touched in a long time either.
Yeah, it'd be interesting. It'll be interesting to see what they do. I think the sky's the limit, really. There's so many different things that they can do. So uh, I'm excited to see what they decide.
For sure. I'm excited, and hopefully we can take you guys all along on the experience as well too when eventually it comes out, which reminds me, Carm, we need to do our storyline missions.
Oh, well, yeah,
We're
there it
get,
is.
we're
There it
getting
is.
behind. And they've already said that's a requirement. So you can make fun of me with coalitions all the time, but I'm already farther in the storyline than you. So you need to start working on it.
And here we are.
Tough.
Tough crowd, tough crowd, tough crowd.
It's okay. But I want to appreciate all of you guys for coming out and hanging out with us. And we hit over 100 subscribers on YouTube. It is crazy. We really love everybody that's came and joined us and put comments on any of the videos. I like reading those comments and responding to them. I know you do too, Carm, especially when they mention you sacrificing your Karu. But we really do like reading all the comments and talking with the community, people joining the link shell, getting all of the people, the assistance they've been asking for, asking any questions. Our Discord's getting bigger as well too. The community's just growing, and it's a really great experience.
And we are very, very interested in what the community wants to hear as well, as far as topic suggestions, anything like that. I mean, we just got a great topic suggestion that we want to use here in the near future in our Discord. So if there's something about the game that you want to learn more about, or something that you want to talk about, or a question, or even if you want to be a guest or something and you think you have a lot of knowledge to share about a certain topic, let us know. We're really interested in getting this community more involved.
Yeah, and you guys can always jump over onto our Twitch page as well too. When we are not producing episodes, we do stream so far our link shell events, but if there's anything that we're just doing where we're helping out the community, we're also streaming on there. We got affiliate status, so we got some really cool emotes. And I'm still working on some other really cool stuff for it as well too. So you can come hang out with us at twitch.tv/nextlevelpc.
You can hear the excitement gleaming in your voice. It's
Yeah, I
great.
talk shit about Karm all the time in the Twitch channel too,
Oh, yeah,
so
there's
you can
that.
come talk. I'm just
There's
kidding.
that.
Karm's constantly watching me on that Twitch channel, so he's making sure I don't talk shit about him.
Or cursing our runs, saying, "Oh, this is going to happen. This isn't going to happen. This isn't going to
Yeah.
happen."
Hey, it didn't happen. I made sure not to say that we were going to get charmed during Order of Courage. I didn't say it at all. I just said, I really hope a thing doesn't happen. And it didn't happen because I didn't say what it was.
So you're admitting you're the problem.
Yes.
Okay.
I mean, I'll have you stream more often so that way you can feel like you're the problem.
And people can see trees and giant Moogles standing on top of Karm, or whatever the heck happens when people decide to troll me.
Yeah, hopefully I'll be able to get a new PC here shortly in the future so mine won't be so laggy. I'm so sorry, everybody. My computer's slowly dying. It's old. Just give it some time. It'll be fine.
Well, thanks again to everybody that's taken the time to listen. Thank you for just being a part of the community that we are building. To all the people in our link shell, all the people in our Discord, we really, really appreciate you. It's been an awesome experience just to hang out with people in the community, because, again, this is all about experience and taking your game to the next level.
Yep, and we hope to see you guys all next time or just hanging out with us in general. We really do appreciate it. Again, if you'd like to join the Discord, the link is down below, regardless of where you're watching this at. Hopefully, it's been popping in there. But definitely come and hang out with us in the Discord. We love talking to everybody in the community. But until next time, take care for now. Bye bye.